Strike. I am so excited to be with you today and interviewing the one, the only, the legend, or as I call her, the captain, my captain, Chris Clarke Epstein. Fantastic. Did I say your last name correctly?
You did, and the way you remember it, but you can never say it this way, is that it's Christine Epstein.
I shan't say it that way, but
No, but it is the memory thing.
It is. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
And so we are coming to you live from my basement here, and this is going to be for NSA-Wisconsin, National Speakers Association Wisconsin. And I'm Lisa Kennecke, and I am kind of a history buff. And so just joining everything, wanted to get in touch with some of our past presidents. And our interview today is with Chris Clarke Epstein, and she is with Change 101. So if you want to be looking things up while we are talking today, do feel free to do that. Chris, I'm going to ask you some questions today, and I see you have some lovely things behind you that we'll talk about as well.
I have props.
I know.
Interactive, I have props.
And that's what this is all about. So it's like a show and tell. So again, thank you for allowing to give us some of your time today. The first question I have for you, Ms.
It is my pleasure, Lisa. Thank you so very much.
Fantastic.
As I sit and watch TV and think, await the call from MSNBC or CNN, I'm thinking this is as close as I'm going to get. So if I were there, this would be my
I know.
place.
And next time I'll get one of those clapboards for you,
yeah.
And we'll say action.
There you go. Do you know there's a whole thing on, I suppose it's on Twitter. I don't know. I don't do a whole lot on Twitter, but where people rate the newscasters' spaces, like what books do they have on their bookshelves and what's the artwork and everything. And I wish you could see it, but over on the wall over there, evidently I don't do the pointing well.
Right.
There is a page from a very old book that I purchased years ago at an NSA silent auction, which is a speaker in front of an audience and I think it's dated in the 1700s. So it's part of my speaking collection.
As well it should be, and you are part of our collection as well.
Well, now I feel really old.
No, I didn't mean that. Oh, I take it back.
Okay. That's okay.
How did you hear about NSA Wisconsin?
When I actually was a sales rep for Blue Cross Blue Shield back in the day, and it was at the time when a company called Career Track was very popular. And they were doing a seminar in Milwaukee, and I was living up in Wausau. And so I got permission from my boss at the time to go to the seminar in Milwaukee. And there were, I think, 4 women in the sales department at the time. So we all signed up to go to this seminar. And I think it was assertiveness skills for women, which was like the hot topic at the time. Mm-hmm. And the other women all lived in the Milwaukee area and worked at the home office, and I was coming down from Wausau. So I went down the night before and got there, and a blizzard ensued. So I was in the hotel where the program was being held. The other women were around the city. So none of them could make it into the program. So I ended up going by myself, which made it a very different experience than if I had gone with, my buddies. So I'm sitting there, and by the time the break came, I thought to myself, I really want to do what she's doing, the woman who was leading the program. By the time lunch came, I thought to myself, I could do it better than what she was doing. And so that was the nugget of maybe there was something I could do other than selling insurance that would be a good idea. So literally, one of the other women in the group who wasn't there, she and I went out to lunch a week later, and we got to talking about it. And I said, you know, I think I would really like to do that kind of work. And she said, you know, I've been thinking about that too. So we literally turned the placemat over in the restaurant and wrote a business plan on the back of the placemat of how we could create a seminar business working together. Now, you've got your list of there we go.
I was just looking and I was trying to figure out with whom you were speaking.
Yeah, her name was Rita Barnard. She never took leadership roles in the chapter, but she knew Marilyn Berger.
Okay.
And there, if you look at that list,
yep,
there will be a group of there will be a group of people, and every single one of those people will tell you that Marilyn Berger was the reason they became involved with. And at that time, it was WPSA, Wisconsin Professional Speakers Association. And little history, trivia, we as a chapter are actually older than NSA. We as a chapter were formed 1 year before NSA came to be. So we hold the place of the oldest chartered chapter in the National Speakers Association.
I just got goosebumps. That is fantastic.
Right. And everybody of that era will tell you that Marilyn was the one. And I would venture to say that no matter where you go down the list, all the years that if you ask people, how did you get involved, there will be a name. Somebody invited me. So Marilyn, so my friend Rita knew Marilyn. So we got on the phone with Marilyn and said, hey, we have this crazy idea that we'd like to get into this business. And she said, okay, she was an assignment giver. She said, and I'm an assignment person. So she said, you have to do two things. She said, you have to join and come to a meeting of WPSA, and you have to join ASTD, the American Society for Training and Development. And she said, if you go to WPSA, and I will use our old name when I'm talking about that time frame, because the chapter gifted me when I became president of NSA. They changed the name to NSA-Wisconsin. That was a lovely gift that they gave me. So I'll use that as a distinctive or dividing mark. So she said, you have to join WPSA to learn about the business of speaking. And she said, you have to join ASTD, which is now ATD, to learn about how adults learn, so that you are, when you are speaking, you are providing value. She said, and then you will meet people who will hire you. So they were there were distinct reasons for becoming active in both of those organizations. So the good news was, right after that conversation, there was a WPSA meeting. And so I signed up for the meeting, and Dan Burris, another name that's on your list,
yep,
and Bill Stevens, another name on your list, were doing a session on how to set fees.
Okay.
So God knows I was sitting in the front row taking notes like crazy, because that seemed like a really important thing to know about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. So the quest for how does this business work and how do you do it successfully? To this day, my agreements have things from Dan Burris's agreement that I got at that very first meeting, because he was so generous and said, here, I'll give you a copy of my letter of agreement and you can modify it to work for you. So that was the way back beginning. And that would have been in, I don't even know if I can count back that far. That would have been in 1980, I think it was 1983 when I went to my first meeting, because I joined National in 84.
And I have from Patty Hendrickson, another past president, 1984 to 85 was Marilyn Berger. Does that sound about right?
That sounds exactly right. Yeah. And by the way, again, historical perspective, membership requirements, both locally and nationally, was if your check cleared the bank.
It's changed just a little.
Just a tad, right? And there were no categories, so there was no academy, there was no professional. You were just a member. Through these years, we have professionalized our membership.
And I want to go into that. That was a perfect segue for you. So I know that you have, you were president of NSA-Wisconsin, and you have a lovely medal behind you. Speaking of professional categories and such, do you want to care to tell us about that?
I would love to tell you about this. This is my, let's see if I can do it. So
yep, that's perfect.
This is my CSP medal, which I got in 1992 in Dallas, Texas, is when I got it. This is the medal, or this is the designation in NSA that you earn, and it is based on your performance, your number of clients, your income over a period of 5 years, and the requirements change from time to time. And reflect different business models as our business has changed collectively. I knew when I started, and I'm going to throw another name out. There's a wonderful woman in the Minnesota chapter, Janie Jason, who was an early mentor of mine. She was of the same era of Marilyn Berger.
Okay.
And in order to get your CSP, you have to go to a session at the national convention where you learn about the history behind it and what it means. And and Janie ran that class the first time I took it. And I remember sitting there and realizing as she was presenting, the tears were just rolling down my face. And I'm like, what are you doing? And I realized it wasn't like boo-hoo, it was, this is who I am. And it was, if I'm going to do this, it's like if you were going to be an accountant, why would you not want to be a certified accountant? This is the designation that says, this is my place and I want to be recognized as a person in it. So I strongly recommend people who are serious about being professional speakers that they investigate the CSP process and start it, because it is a 5-year process. Mm-hmm. So get in line and get it done.
And my understanding, thank you, Chris, for all of that, is that very few people actually have that designation. And I don't currently, at this time of recording in May of 2020, I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but it's not very many.
No, they just announced the new class for this year, and I saw something, but I'd be making it up, which I am certainly willing to do. But the other thing that people need to know is we are part of an international federation, and so they're the various, our sister associations around the globe actually also have CSP designations, all of which are, I mean, they're not identical, but they all have the same standards. So that a CSP from Australia and one from the United States have a caliber thing. And quite honestly, meeting planners pay attention to that.
Yeah. Oh,
Because it
I
means
believe
something.
it.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So I shall aspire to that perhaps one day. So
Absolutely. And trust me on this, you have me on your list. So whether you aspire to it or not, you will be prodded. You know.
Prod away, my friend.
Okay.
So before I go into the other lovely trophy that you have back there, so you got involved, Marilyn Berger got you involved, you did a lot of things with NSA-Wisconsin. What would you say through NSA-Wisconsin was either the best gift that you got or your favorite memory? So I'm kind of combining two questions.
I think it was in the opportunities that I had with the chapter that I started thinking about the concept of leadership in action. You know, when you think about it, we're very odd. You know, and I mean that, you know, out of love.
Sure.
I feel like everybody loves Raymond. You know, I cook it out of love. But the issue is, we go out into the world, depending on what your topic area is and depending on where your particular niche market is, and we advise people about how they ought to treat their employees, run their companies, think about their relationship with their customers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we do all of those with people who have much larger organizations than we do, sitting in our basements and in our dining rooms, you know, with, you know, and maybe we have one or two people that we work with. It occurred to me fairly early on in my career, I was fortunate to connect with a very large telecommunications firm. And I was advising a business unit president who had 70,000 people in his organization. And there was a day when I sat in his office and realized that I was pontificating about how we should do this. And there, you know, you get that little bit of, I may be overstretching just a little bit here. So it occurred to me at that point that the opportunities that I had with my beloved volunteer organization gave me the chance to test my theories in a slightly bigger pond.
Sure.
than in my own business. So I have viewed through the years all of my opportunities, both locally in Wisconsin and then nationally, as an opportunity to say, what is it that I really believe about how leadership works or doesn't work? And if I put that into practice in this living laboratory, what happens? And does that make me a more credible resource for my clients? So to your question, what are the opportunities? They have been myriad because, oh my Lord, you know, our members are headstrong people who really know what they know. And so the herding cats metaphor is sometimes interesting. And I would say, by and large, through the years, you know, we have had great people serving on the board. And I won't go down the list, I won't name names. We did have to fire a prospective president at one point. And we had to make that decision as a board that for the good of the organization,
Yes.
that this person needed to hear some really, really difficult feedback, and we did it. And so we've had challenges through the years, and that's how you grow and develop. I'm trying to remember timing here. It would have been probably in the mid 90s.
Okay.
Where the NSA has 30 plus chapters. I don't know what
28 right now.
28 right now. I think high might have been about 37 at the time. And that structure needed some more structure. And so there was an organization called the Chapter Liaison Council that was formed.
Okay.
And that was formed by, there were past presidents of chapters who were selected, and they became sort of an advisory board for the chapters. So there was a resource. And I got involved with that. And that was when I actually chaired that council for a while. And again, we were at an NSA in what was then the convention, now Influence. And there was a problem that involved the chapters, and the NSA board was meeting, and somebody on the NSA board said, we really need to find out what the chapters think about this. And then somebody said, they're meeting right down the hall. And so somebody from the board ran down to our meeting and said, could somebody come in and we'll give you 3 minutes to give us your opinion on this crucial issue. And so we're sitting around the table, and everybody looked around and they looked at me and they said, okay, you go. So I walked in, and then say board, pretty tight ship. And they said 3 minutes. So I said, okay. So in 3 minutes, I gave the opinion of all the chapters and said, thank you very much, and turned and walked out. And what I found out afterwards, none of the people on the board knew who I was from a hole in the wall. And they were like, who was that masked woman who just walked in here? And quite honestly, that was how I transitioned to doing things on a national level. So from a learning, anybody who has aspirations to do things, do your work on the local level, do it really well, learn what you need to learn, create a network of people at that level, and then be prepared, because you just never know when you may get the opportunity to show that you've done your homework. Unfortunately, ego being what it is, most people in NSA, when they get asked, well, would you like to do stuff on a national level? Their response is, I could keynote. I'm ready to keynote at Influence. You gotta fold some paper for a while first. So
yeah,
although we are in many cases ego driven, the reality is, if you look at the people who have done the work and had great impact on NSA over the year, they didn't do it because they did a keynote. They did it because they did all of the other things. And then when an opportunity opened up, somebody said, I know the right person.
So in that, I have been told the spirit of Cavett from the very, very first meeting that I ever went to. My guess is that you have folded more than just paper to earn that lovely statue behind you. Tell us about you and your service and that award, or the bamboo tree, whatever you'd like to talk about. It's up to you.
Well, you always have to worry when you put Cavett behind you in a picture, because he's pointing. You always have to say, what part of my anatomy is he pointing at? After I got the award, I did, because I do weird things like this, I did a survey of past Cavett winners and asked them where their Cavett statue where it resides in their house, and got really funny stories. Terry Paulson puts his outgoing mail in between Cavett's legs. Robert Henry said he kept it in his bathroom and put the extra toilet paper roll on the hand. My Cavett actually resides at the top of our stairs, and Frank and I have decided if anybody ever breaks in the house, it's very, very heavy, that it's going to be our weapon of choice.
Good to know.
So Cavett has a life. Nito Cobain actually has 2 Cavett statues. One he has in his home, and one he has in his office as the president of High Point University.
Oh.
Lou Heckler, another name of somebody I adore, he also has 2 Cavetts. One is the one he got, and the other belonged to Rosita Perez, and she bequeathed it to him when she passed away. Which is interesting, because this is a real segue here. I was thinking the other day, as we are in this odd time of being hunkering down in our homes, as you look around your house, I look around my house and I think, holy cow, I have got so much crap. My children. And I'm thinking, okay, so are they going to argue over Cavett? Who do I think needs to go to Cavett? And then, of course, Frank and I watch Antiques Roadshow on Monday night, and I'm thinking somebody's going to take it 30 years from now to an Antiques Roadshow and say, what is this with? So anyway, Cavett. The notion of Cavett is he referred to us. He's the one, of course, who came up with the, instead of fighting over a piece of the pie, why don't we work together to make the pie bigger? Which is the thing culturally, I think, that is foundational both to NSA and NSA-Wisconsin. People come to meetings and they are absolutely blown away because somebody says, I don't know what to do about this. And somebody else says, no problem, here, let me send you something that'll help you with it. And that is, and it is not only the thing that, it is so value-based in my, and it was the way Marilyn Berger taught me, and it is the way that I have attempted to teach other people. And I want to share 2 stories. One's a little longer than the other. I remember many years ago now that some feedback got back to me, sort of through the grapevine, as it so often does.
Yeah.
That somebody who had come to a meeting had been, we had been introduced, and we had a chat about one thing or another. And the feedback that I got was she had told this other person that I was not helpful, that she was disappointed. And I mean, that was like cut to the quick. And
yeah.
So I'm trying to think what in the world would have happened. And so I finally teased it apart. And back in that particular time, it was a time when there was a pretty big interest in the chapter. So there were a lot of new people coming in. And it was at a time when I was pretty busy with my business. And so I had a lot of people who were asking for time. And what I had done is I put together a mini workbook. And so when people would say, would you be willing to spend some time with me? I would say, I'd be happy to. Here's the deal. I'm going to send you this document. And when you get it all filled out, then let me know and we'll get together. And it was 4 pages. I mean, it wasn't like, it was work, but it was work that would set you up for value. Well, evidently she got this thing and was a little annoyed that she was supposed to do something. And evidently that wasn't me helping her. And so I thought, well, okay. And to this day, and this is like 20 years ago, to this day, there are people in Wausau, Wisconsin, who I'll run into at the post office who say, you know, I've got that thing that you sent me, and one of these days I'm going to get around to doing it. I'm like, hey, you know, no big deal. Whenever I'm ready when you are, you know. So spirit of Cavett is not that you do the work for somebody else. Spirit of Cavett is that you are there to support. So that's story number one. Story number two is the one that I'm sort of famous for within the halls of NSA.
I can't wait.
Again, it revolves around Marilyn Berger.
Okay.
So my very first convention, Marilyn sat me down. She said, come down to Milwaukee. You can buy me lunch and I'll give you your instructions. And we used to get the big brochure that had all of the sessions. So I went down to Milwaukee. We had lunch. We went through. She always had a red pen. She was a former teacher. So she went through the whole thing and she said, okay, you have to go to this session and you go to this session to look at the style, because I think this person's style is something you should know about. You go to this session because of the content. I think you need the content. And so we went through the whole thing. So she planned my entire convention. And again, I'm an assignment person. So I'm like, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. And then she said, and like anything else in life, you will get out of it what you're willing to put in. She said, so when you get there, she said, go to one of the staff people, introduce yourself, and volunteer. Now, in those days, there was a lot of volunteer help just on logistical kinds of things. So I found one of the staff people and I went up and I said, my name is Chris Clarke Epstein. Marilyn Berger is my mentor. She said I was supposed to volunteer. So let me know what I can do to help. And the staff person looked at me and she said, you know, there's something you could do. And I said, what's that? She said, we are having a bit of a discrepancy between the hotel people and our count of the number of meals that we're doing. She said, and we want to be good stewards of our members' money. So we don't want to pay for things that we're not getting. And we certainly want to pay for things that we are getting. So what we have decided is that we're going to station some volunteers at the doors to the lunch, and we're going to collect the tickets.
Yep.
So we know how many people go in. She said, would you be willing to do that? I said, collecting tickets? I can do that.
Right.
I got hands. I got a mouth. And she said, okay. She said, here's what you get. She said, if you will do that, we will let you go in before the official opening and you can like reserve a seat. So you'll have a good seat. And I think, trade off, good job. So I'm there at my post and people, and you know how it is, there's a big rush and there's lots of people and you say, do you have your ticket? And they say, here's my ticket. You say, thank you very much. So most of the rush has gone through and it's quieted down a little bit. And so I'm kind of catching my breath, stacking up the tickets. And I see down the hall into this doorway is an elderly gentleman. And you can tell it's his wife because you know how it is, couples that have been together forever. And they're walking towards me and I put on my customer service face and I say, good afternoon, we're so glad you're here for lunch. Do you by chance have your lunch tickets? And the man does what men do. You know, they start doing this, looking at pockets, and he said, I don't believe I have my ticket. And he looks at the woman and he said, Miss Trudy, do you have the tickets? And she looked at him and she said, no, I don't believe I have the tickets. She said, I believe they may be up in the dresser in our room. And I look at him and I say, I am so sorry. I said, but I can't let you in without your tickets because there is a discrepancy between what the hotel is saying, and we want to be good fiduciaries of our members' money. And he said, oh, not a problem. I'll go up and get it. He said, would it be okay if Miss Trudy sat in this chair while I go? And I'm like, oh, no, I'll keep an eye on her. Not a problem. So he settles her in the chair and he turns around, starts walking away, at which point, staff person comes hustling over to me and she goes, what's wrong? And I said, well, he didn't have his lunch ticket. He's going back up to the room to get it. She said, do you know who that is? I said, no, but he's a very nice man. And she said, that's Cavett Robert. You have just sent the founder of the National Speakers Association to go get his lunch ticket. She's, of course, white as a sheet. I'm sure she's thinking, I'm fired, you know. And he went up, got his ticket, came back down. So I always end the story by saying, you could deny lunch to the founder of the National Speakers Association and still become president and get the award.
That is quite possibly the best story that I have ever heard with NSA.
It is. I think, and quite frankly, I got to know Miss Trudy. Cavett, this is another little fun thing. Cavett gave his first paid, he was an attorney. He was a Hollywood attorney. And you know, like did the John Wayne movie kind of negotiations and stuff. Miss Trudy told me that he gave his first paid speech at age 65. And she said he came alive when he did that. So for people who are like, oh my God, I'm too old to do this. No, not so much. But that sense of humility and of service is not something that was layered on him. It was the essence of who he was. He always sat in the front row at all of our meetings. And there are many people who will tell you that they got letters from him where he wrote them and said, you know what, you should be a professional speaker. I never got one of those.
I still think you're okay. I'm going to go with you. Live the spirit of Cavett. Yes.
Thank you very much. My dear friend Gary Rifkin, who has done probably the best job of anybody that I know of reminding all of us that, because very few people anymore in our membership actually knew Cavett. However, everybody knows somebody who was Cavett to them. And that's why our culture has remained strong, I believe.
And I will tell you that had a trickle-down effect on me, even at my first meeting. So I had heard about, well, I did my research before I joined and those kind of things, and had read the research on Cavett Robert and the spirit, you know, of the pie and those kind of things. And I don't know if you know this, but I brought a pie to my very first NSA-Wisconsin meeting to present.
What kind of pie?
Thanks for asking. It was an elegant farmer pie,
I
which
love
is
those.
baked in a paper bag, and I went straight up apple because I wasn't sure, you know, how crazy to be for my very first meeting. And Susan Young was our president at the time, and her face, and I was like, I think I'm gonna like this organization.
Yes.
So we had pie for dessert.
I would absolutely say that Susan is an incredible NSA-Wisconsin example of Cavett. I will tell you the other thing that you can't see very well.
Oh, my apologies. What is this? We have more.
This is, you asked earlier about amazing things that happen. My gosh, is this dirty? Oh, that's really not nice.
I can see Legacy Award on it.
Yeah, yes, the chapter gave this to me in 2018 and named the Chris Clarke Epstein Legacy Award, which is in effect our chapter version of the Cavett, if I can be so bold as to put it in that
Yes, yes, you can.
concept. And they had an incredible party and had invited friends of mine from all over the country who showed up as a complete surprise. And it was a magical, magical evening. So.
Well, congratulations and thank you for all that you have done for us. And I think that one of the last questions that I have for you, and then do feel free to add whatever you'd like, is, so I'm an aspiring, well, I'm a speaker, but aspiring in this profession now. And what pearls or words of wisdom might you have? You've already given us a lot of getting involved and volunteering. Is there anything else that you're like, you know, Lisa, I really want people to know this? Or is there a book that you want to talk about, or anything else? The floor is yours.
That's really a profound question. I think two things. When I started, I was pretty religious about, a little hint. I always had notes when I spoke of some sort, but here's what I learned. I always had a handout. Everybody who has ever heard me speak got something from me. Sometimes they were bookmarks, and I wish I had one, but I didn't grab one before I came. But so I always had something that I had some stuff written down on. Now, what I discovered was if your notes are on a handout that is the same thing that everybody else has, they don't think you have notes. You just have something that looks like what they have in front of them. And I have had, sometimes when it's like you have a workbook, and I've been holding, a spiral bound workbook, and I've had people come up and say, I can't believe you spoke all day long and you didn't have any notes. Yeah. And I'm like, well, what did you think this was? But they just don't perceive it that way. What I always had I had two things written on my handout. One was, forget yourself, remember your audience. Mm-hmm. Because it is pretty easy to get tied up in your ego. And if you ever want to know that to be true, plan to videotape yourself sometime. Yeah. Yeah. And all of a sudden you realize that all you're thinking about is, what's the camera angle? Did I wear the right clothes? Is my lipstick? All of a sudden it becomes all about you, and you forget the fact that the only reason you're there is to be of service of the people in your audience. So forget yourself and remember your audience. And if you do that, then I think you're going to be on the right track. Secondly, on my handout, I always had an assignment at the bottom, okay, of how many leads I had to bring back to the office after a presentation. And after you do this for a while, you get to know, the makeup of the audience that you're working with, how well you're going to connect with them, how likely you are to be able to be of service to what they need. And it was my job to go back to my office with cards. Sure. With names of people that I could follow up for. And I could figure out pretty much, with this kind of an audience, with this many people, I should have 3, I should have 10, but I wrote it down. And when I would get back to the office, somebody would say, where are my cards? So this is a referral business, and it's immediate feedback, because if you don't have that, if you know that you should go back with 3 or 5 or 10, and you're going back with 0 or one, then you didn't read that first thing about forget yourself and remember the audience.
Yeah.
Because you're not delivering what it is that the people really, really need. So I think there are some, I'm making this up, performance routines that you need to build into your, the way you do your work, that will help you keep focused in the way that you really want to keep focused. And those are two that I've used.
I think that those are brilliant, and I love that. And I know that going through, you've talked a lot about Marilyn Berger and how she helped you, and I know that, you know, you're helping me. If people wanted to, do you have a book that people could read that you've written? Or do we just go to Change 101 or email you at Chris@Change 101?
The best is going to be to email me at Change 101. I am, my website is, I'm going to sound like every other speaker on the planet, has been pretty static for quite a while. As you know, I'm dealing with some health issues, and so it's really been interesting because I'm really going through the grieving process, because although we're all sort of thinking about how our world has changed given the current events, mine is changed in the coming to the realization that it's not going to be the way it was before. And I don't exactly know what that means. I'm doing work with speakers who are doing writing. I'm doing that kind of stuff. So and go ahead.
Well, and I see you have a whole bunch of wine behind you, and I also signed up for the workshop that you're going to be doing on Friday. So I'm excited.
Are you really? Oh, what fun! I'm so excited. I have partnered with Kathy Fayok, who is a absolutely kick him in the butt, get that book written coach. She and I, we're very similar in underlying values. Hers is like, get the darn thing done, and mine is get the darn thing done really well. So we parallel things. So I'm really looking forward to that. Speaking of, because we've talked about assignments.
Which you have given me. Yes. Is this another for me?
Right, well, this is for you and for anybody. I want to flip back to, we're talking about leadership.
Yep.
I have, as so many people have, been looking at the current situation in the world and recognizing the importance of leadership or the lack thereof. And I have found two examples that I have found to be incredibly helpful. And the first one came from Doris Kearns Goodwin's book called Leadership in Turbulent Times.
Okay.
And she is, in this book, she profiles Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt and Lyndon Johnson, and what they did at times of great upheaval. And particularly, I have been reading about Franklin Delano Roosevelt and the first 100 days of his presidency, which of course was at the height of the Depression, and what he did in that 100 days to turn the morale of the United States around. And it is phenomenal. And so I recommend this highly. And she's an amazing historian and a great writer. And then I found this one, which is The Splendid and the Vile, Eric Larson.
Okay.
Who wrote, the one he's known for is The Devil in the White City. He wrote the book about the World's Fair. But this is about, and I did not realize this, this is about the first 100 days of Winston Churchill's, when he was made prime minister. And that is what led into the Blitz of London. And again, what he did and the way he approached having to talk about, I mean, tens of thousands of people dying because bombs are being dropped on their city night after night after night. And the history of, and it's not only the political history, but it's also what was going on in Germany and why Hitler did what he did at that time. And there was a point at which if he hadn't let his ego get involved,
Yeah.
he probably would have ended World War II at that point. But I have absolutely been inspired by the notion of what an individual, now these are extraordinary individuals, but they are not super people. And these stories tell about warts and all, but how having an understanding of how leadership works,
Yeah.
can make all the difference. And so in this time of being slightly depressed of how it's not working, these are two resources that I highly recommend that will change your attitude.
That is fantastic, and I will absolutely let our membership know that. And with that, on behalf of NSA Wisconsin and NSA National, but I'm not there yet, thank you for all that you have done and for allowing me to be a part of your world and making the pie bigger for me as well. Any last words, thoughts that you'd like to say before we say adieu?
I thank you for this opportunity to take a little stroll down memory lane and have a flood of great memories and the opportunity to think about how individual contribution that happens because of a desire to build that bigger pie and to have a devotion to the work that we do can accumulate over time into meaningful stuff. So this has been a great joy, and I wish you all the best. And when's the election?
Oh, I don't know. So for the people viewing this, it is May 6, 2020. I'm running for secretary of NSA Wisconsin chapter. So fingers crossed that,
I'll be voting.
Well,
I'll
thank
be
you.
voting.
I appreciate that very,
You're
very
welcome.
much.
You're welcome.
So I am going to add this. I'm going to be trying to record all of our lovely past presidents. And with that, again, thank you, my friend. I'm going to stop the record button, but do please stay on.
I will. Thank you.